Good evening. This is Wednesday. We are Wednesday, January 26th, and this is a special operations meeting to discuss the budget. And I am going to turn it right over to Ms. Bellizzi.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for that introduction tonight. Our agenda for tonight, it's our first board, our workshop for budget. So our agenda for tonight is going to focus on a quick overview of the budget book, just briefly explaining each section. Myself, Karen Vayu, Dominic Barone, Amy Turner, and Mrs. Latour will and Mr. Thompson will just quickly go through. We're kind of each going to, if we forget something, kind of chime in and make sure we give an overview as to what each section entails. And then Mr. Bondi is going to share his budget, which is section 7. Then Mr. Barone will begin the discussions and start to share section 4. And then we are hoping to have a hard stop around 8 o'clock. So we're thinking hard stop for 8 o'clock tonight, and then we will have another budget meeting set up, workshop meeting set up for Monday night, the 31st. The other piece I also wanted to share was for board members. I did leave open and will continue to leave open the ability for you to provide feedback and questions through the Google form, and that will stay open until Monday morning, January 31st at 9 a.m. So I will leave that open in case there are other questions that come up that you'd like to submit. And then the plan is for Monday night to be able to answer those questions and then move on to the strategic section for Monday night as well. So if everyone has their budget book with them, I think I'll just start with at least going over the sections. So I know it's a pretty big binder. It's also online. We did include the link within the agenda if there's anyone watching at home that wants to kind of follow along. Within this budget binder or the piece that's online, there are 8 sections. The first 2 sections really, and I have to give a shout out to Mrs. Karen Vayu and to Dr. Thompson and to Dave Bryant and Karen Vayu's department for helping to upgrade and keep these first 2 sections current. There's a lot of work and time that goes into that, so thank you very much. The first section of the budget introduction goes over an overview of all of our district information. So if you happen to have it out in front of you or you're looking online, you'll see page 1 basically goes over our enrollment by grade and gives where we currently are this year by October 1, what we're projecting for next year. As you move through, you'll see some of the slides that I shared in our initial budget presentation on pages 2 and 3, which go over our enrollment projections, overall enrollment, 504 enrollment, our EL in bilingual enrollment, our special education, free and reduced. And then when you get to page 4, it goes through our average class sizes and continues on to detail outplacements, private outplacements, our facilities update information, overview of certified staff and non-certified staff within the district. So that's kind of the overall district picture. As we move through to section 2, also part of the budget introduction, but it's broken down by school. So in this section, you can take a look by specific school and get the breakdown of student information based on enrollment, current enrollment, past enrollment, projected.
And just to add to that, just to make it a little clear, at the top of every school page is the current year, and the bottom half of the page is the projected.
Thank you. So you can go through in this section and see all of our schools and the specific information that's detailed throughout that. I'm going to turn section 3 over to Mr. Barone so he can, Mrs. Raccio.
can I just make a couple, and I'm not gonna ask questions tonight, but can I just make a couple, quick comments? Pages 5 and 6 are really hard on my eyes. I'm gonna have to go online because the print is so small, I can't read it. And then for new board members, Mrs. Belizzi, could you just tell them on page 4 what the board approved class sizes are?
Absolutely, thank you. So two things, we can take a look definitely at the print when we go back and look at that information for years coming. We definitely can take a look at that and see maybe if we have to break it up. So thank you for that feedback. In our elementary schools especially, in our K through 2 schools, we like to follow the guidelines of up to 21 students in a class. In grades 3 through 5, we like to stay within the guidelines of up to 23 students in a class. If there are no other questions or comments, then I'm going to move this to Dominic Barone, who's going to share the rest of the sections within the book for the overview.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to jump to section 3, which is the next section in the book. And section 3 has, in my mind, 3 main components. It has our budget requests, and that's really the first 3 pages, 3A, B, and C. Then the next group of items is really the strategic plan budgets. So I guess the significant amount of pages in this section are really dedicated to each of the different strategic plan budgets that we're going to review, I believe on Monday night. But you know, these go and their, you know, their purpose is to identify what we think we're going to do in the future and document what we're doing as we go along. So we have different color codings for whether something was deferred from one year to another, if it was funded, how it might have been funded. And then the last component of section 3 is the prioritized strategic items that we've chosen to include in the budget request. And that, if I can get to the page number, I guess page number 1, because it's like its own section. It's the last page in section 3. And that total of the total of those items is included in our budget request currently, as is in our request that we're making. All right, is that clear for what section 3 entails before I jump to section 4?
No, in the request column, that's it's 108 million. That's just adding all the previous ones up.
That's a running total of all the items. So
Okay.
it starts with the sustained request, and then each item in this plan increases.
The budget. Okay.
Okay. Ms. Costelli?
So Dom, just a quick, it's not a question, so I didn't submit it, but I think it's a correction, I think, on page 1. So it's actually the first page of the strategic. If I'm reading this correctly, that first item, communication specialist, it says grant funded for this year, but then we don't have it. We have it as a recurring cost. So should that be, you know, the gold color, and should that reduce from 62.4 to 31.2? Or am I not reading that right?
We didn't fund the grant writer, so we deferred it to 23-24.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you for.
We're gonna go through all these, all those pages at the next meeting, though.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
That part of it, okay?
Yep.
Are we okay to move to section 4?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to, just while we're on it, just share one thing, and Dominic, correct me if I'm wrong. Mrs. Caselli, I think we left it as the green how it is there, so we can also show the years we requested it.
Okay,
The
got
history
it.
of it as well, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
I get it.
All right, so section 4 is really, it's a deeper dive into the budget. It really documents our sustained services request. it also, and I apologize for my dogs, I don't know what's going on back there, if you can hear them or not. So it really documents the change from year to year within the budget. And I'm gonna, really dig into it after Mr. Bondi does his presentation. But section 4 represents all the accounts that we are, budgeting, and it also documents why things might have changed, and also compares it, what our request is for next year versus what our budget is this year, and also shows what we've spent in the previous year. And I'll get into it more when we start that section. I just, I don't want to end up repeating myself. So when we start digging into it, I think would be probably a better time to field questions on that. So I'll jump to section 5 unless there's any burning questions on 4 that you can't wait till later in the meeting. All right. So section 5 is really, it's a, get to it. It starts off with what I'll call a medium level summary of our budget, and the 3-digit code is what we refer to as the object, and it's really our level of control as far as when we need to transfer funds or get authority to overspend funds, etc. And it shows our request it shows the sustained budget request, and that is really page 5A is our sustained request at the object level, and it also shows the similar information, the current budget, or the current budget at a point in time. And I say that because we might have transferred money since and I know we've transferred money since we started the budget process. So that, that revised budget for 21-22, it's a point in time. We don't keep maintaining that as we go through the process, the budget process. Otherwise, it'll seem like we're kind of reinventing the wheel every time we talk about it, because the numbers will change. But this is really a summary of the section 4 area. So that's really the first part of section 5, and then the pages after that, pages 2 through 62 of section 5, are further detail. And this particular order is sorted by org code and object. Okay, and it's a 4-digit object with or 4-character object with a letter at the end, which means we break it down further between not just salaries, but certified salaries versus non-certified salaries, and even further between custodians, etc. And what we call the org code in this report, it's a 7-digit code, and that tells us 2 things. It tells us a program and a location. So, God bless you. God bless you. Where the object kind of tells us what we're buying, supplies, insurance, etc. The org code it's more of a cost center, if you're familiar with that term. It tells us a program like art, math, science, what have you. It also tells us a specific location or cost center. So it could be MYB school, or it could be the special ed department, or a district-wide location. So this is further granular detail that we use to manage the budget. And this is really the level of detail that's in our accounting system when we process transactions. So, one of the questions that we had asked, it was asked about, why would a school have multiple educational supply accounts? It's because we allocate them between maybe math and art and other different programs or items. Are there any questions on section 5? Okay, I don't think I see any, so I'll jump to section 6. This section is really, we don't really adopt this. These are all the grants we received, and they could be federal, private, state, local, we put it in here so that we can see the grant money coming in, and also so that when this document goes over to the town, they also see our grant money coming in. The 21-22 year is larger than past and future years right now because of we received significant COVID funding. And this is a mix of grants. They could be recurring grants. We get certain grants we get mostly every year. We get these one-time grants, and we get multi-year grants where we might get a certain amount that we got to spend over 2 years. And then the following year, we might get a new grant that's good for 2 years. Any questions on section 5? Okay, I'm sorry, section 6.
Oh, okay.
All right, the grants are section 6. I'm sorry. I clicked on my screen a little crazy here. All right. Section 7 is the food service budget that Mr. Bondi's going to discuss after I'm done with this review. And, there's basically 2 pages. There's a high level P&L and a more detailed P&L that I think Mr. Bondi will get into the details on in the next section or in the next part of the meeting. Okay, and then section 8 is really it's reference materials. We tried to define the terms that are unique to the school district that some may not be obvious to folks that aren't in the school district, whether it's a parent or whatever, a business owner in town, etc. And we've also at times included the old questions from previous years so that people could, to the board members and internally, we don't typically send the old questions out to the rest of the community. But it's a reference area that we pack with different pieces of information. So are there any questions on any of the sections other than 4? Because we're going to kind of jump into that after Mr. Bondi. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I think we can jump into the food service budget if you're ready, Mr. Bondi.
Okay, I'm ready. Good evening, everybody. Okay, on our proposed budget for 2022-2023, this budget is in section 7, page 1 and 2 of your budget book. Okay, just to start off, this budget is going to assume what we regard as a normal school year, which means that the COVID waivers and emergency universal feeding is scheduled to end on June 30th of this year. As of now, that date is still firm. There's no indication that it will be continued for next year. So the budget is based on just what we call a normal school year. On the revenue side, it assumes reverting back to the paid, reduced, and free meal categories, where students will have to pay full reduced price, and then free will be reimbursed back at the lesser reimbursement from the federal government. It also assumes an increase of paid lunches due to the residual effect of universal feeding from the past 2 years. We want to make sure that we retain some of those meals that we're serving this year. It assumes a typical increase in paid, reduced, and free lunch reimbursement rates. Usually they go up 10 to 15 cents every year. I believe I raised them reimbursement rates. I calculated reimbursement rates at an increase of 10 cents for next year across the board. Catering income assumes an increase in adult meals program and catered events. Our a la carte income assumes a price increase, which we normally have every year. The price increase on a la carte items is based on the bid specs, the bid pricing that we get from our vendors. State grant payments assume a reduction the past 2 years, we've received COVID relief funds, and I don't foresee us receiving any COVID relief funds for next year. So our anticipated, our budgeted income, total revenue for 2022, 2023 is $1,966,128. On our product cost, our food cost, you'll see there's an increase in there, assumes the rising cost of meats, groceries, and produce. To be honest with you, I don't see those costs going back down. There's all kinds of inflationary costs that we're dealing with now. Usually, it's my experience that those costs tend to not go down, especially with meat and produce. Our paper costs do reflect an easing of supply issues and a steady 3% cost of revenues. So right now, we're seeing paper cost. I don't want to say go down across the board, but our paper supplies are increasing, which has not been the case before, and I foresee that in the future. So I don't see any increases for next year on that. On our payroll, our full-time employee assumes that the operation is fully staffed, and all full-time cafeteria associates resume their normal non-COVID hours. We've had last year and this current year, we've had a situation where there's a few part-timers who are using sick time, and we've had to replace them and pay other associates the full-time wages.
Excuse me, Jim?
Yes,
You got a couple questions you may want to.
sure.
Mr. Bondi, and I'm new to the whole budget process, so if I'm asking silly questions, just let me know. What is BOE contribution and why is that something that happens after the year? I don't see that in the column.
No, that is due to the COVID and our losses. That is the Board of Ed contribution that was given to our operations to enable us to pay our bills for the past few years.
Okay, because I see one in 2019 and 2020, whereas is
Yep.
that also, okay.
We stopped doing that a while ago, and then once COVID hit, we ended up supplementing them because of all the lost revenue they had, and so we've continued that through this year, and the hope is that they're going to be self-sufficient going forward.
Yes, as of now, we do have a surplus
Okay.
as of the end of December.
Okay, thank you.
Another question?
Yeah, so you had mentioned a couple of times this is all assuming that all the COVID stuff ends. Is there a plan B, or what would we do if any of this stuff ends up continuing beyond June 30th?
Then we just do what we've done in the past few years, and it's all dependent on the federal government and the state, basically. To do a proposed budget with different scenarios probably is not prudent at this point. There's no indication that we're going to revert back to what we've done in the past 2 years, so I thought it would be prudent to just do a normal budget for now.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, getting back to staffing on our part-time employees, that also reflects a slight increase as we go back to our normal schedules. The medical benefits reflect a yearly increase. And then we have our life insurance, pension, Social Security, and unemployment costs. So our total personnel projected cost for the budget is $1,044,727. On our other direct costs, they're pretty much cut and dried with the exception of Maintenance, parts, and equipment, you'll see there's a close to $20,000 jump there. I am anticipating that we will have to replace some equipment as we go forward. Right now, we do have some, we have a application for a grant to replace some equipment this year, which I hope that we will be awarded. But for next year, I do believe that we will also need to replace some equipment because our equipment is aging, and we a lot of repairs in the past year and a half. So, and our total other expenses are $79,079, and we have a surplus shown of $1,481. Questions? Go ahead.
I have something very picky, very picky. Freight is spelled incorrectly.
I'm sorry?
The word freight. F-R-I.
Okay.
Is F-R-E-I-G-H-T.
Yes, you're right.
I'm being picky. I'm being picky.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Mr. Barone, are you ready for section 3?
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on section 3 and then go to
sorry.
section 4.
Section 4. I apologize.
No, I put
Sorry.
section 3 in
Thank
there
you.
too, because I did put section 3 there because I actually wanted to just talk about it just a little bit. So if we could all just go to section 3, 3A, and I'll wait a sec till everybody can flip back there. And just really, this is a 3-year projection, but what I wanted to just I guess explain is we're really talking about the 22-23 budget. That's the sustained budget we're requesting, or that's what we put down as the initial request of 108 million and the 1.99%. The columns to the right of that, the 23-24 and the 24-25, are simply projections out in the future based on this budget. If it was awarded and if all our assumptions for years 2 and 3 were accurate or relevant when we got to those years, I guess I should say. And then the percentage change for the out years, the 23, 24, and 24, 25, I made those not applicable because we really don't know what our base is going to be for next year. So I didn't want to take a percentage on a projected budget that I don't know if we'll actually get fully funded. Okay, and then if you want to just move to page 3B, and again, the 995,000, that's our strategic budget request for the current year, and that represents 0.94%. And again, we're just projecting out what we might make in strategic requests out 2 years. And the third page, 3C, is simply the aggregate of 3A and B. All right. So, as of right now, we're asking for 109,840,683, a 2.93% increase all in, including state and strategic. Okay. All right. So, if we can start now on section 4. And I'm going to try to go slowly and methodically through each page that I think is, has interest based on the activity. But if we could just start on section 4, page 1, and the top of the line says personnel services, and we break this out into our major objects, and then we show our objects below that. So personnel services, the first line of this section shows what we're requesting for personnel services, including the contingency, and it's $72,403,990. And what that represents, it's an increase of 1.793 million over the prior, or over the current year's budget. And it also shows that we actually spent $69.237 million in the 2021 fiscal year. Don't worry, I'm not gonna go through every line like that, but I just kind of wanted to show you that that's what all those columns represent for each individual item. So the first object in our budget, and actually if you were to flip back to page 3A, you would be able to tie out that 72.403 number to the first line of 3A on the sustained, and that's how that works. And then I'll show you where the strategic falls into this on the next page, because it's not here. It's on the second page. So the first object is contingency, and we had a pretty good reduction of about 125,000. The way we did that was we had some items in contingency that we didn't feel we needed to be in there for the next year. One of them was a bus in case we had to add a bus. And then we had some equipment and a few other items that we removed out of the contingency account. And that allowed us to reduce that request by about 125,000. Okay. The next category is the 111 certified salaries. And you can see all the different items we itemized here. I'm not going to go through every one, but I'm just going to touch on the ones I think are of interest. And then if you have questions, you can obviously ask me. But a lot of these increases are contractual. We have in the 111s here, we have the teachers and the administrators. So we are bound, by the contract. Sometimes there's a percentage increase, there's a step increase, or what have you, and that's how why basically the sustained budget request went up by the 949,000. And again, for the administrators, it was about 103,000. So many other items I wanted to touch on in here that I don't know might be interesting or might not be. We have the severance number was it's a decrease of about 200,000, and what that represents is we just have less teachers retiring, so there's going to be less payout at the end of our in the next fiscal year. So that's why that number changed quite a bit. And then the other thing was the summer school, the ESY summer school, and we increased the hourly rate for next year, and that's why you're seeing a increase of about 70,000 on the summer school. Are there any questions on the 111s, the certified salaries?
College interns.
Okay, yeah, we use them at the schools, and I think that we pay the university, and I think the fee went up a little bit.
It did, yeah, Mr. Ross. Their fee went up. They let us know already that their fees for next year have gone up.
Thank you.
Ms. Costelli?
So I just have I'm a little hesitant to ask questions because I'm not sure if I should be submitting these questions or asking them tonight. So
you have the option.
Okay. I would much prefer to ask them than to be submitting them, to be honest with you. So the substitutes, $100 per day, that's what we're projecting we want to increase it to?
That's what we're currently paying.
We are currently paying $100?
Yeah, it went up last year, I think.
Last year.
I don't recall that. I'm sure I knew, but I didn't recall that. That's not so bad.
No.
Okay.
We did increase it last year, yes.
Okay. And you made a statement about less retirements next year, but we really don't know that until November, right?
No, that's the following. So we know this past November, we know what we're going to pay out for the school year. That severance will be paid out in July or August.
Gotcha.
So it'll be in the next fiscal year. So
Okay,
Okay?
okay, gotcha, thank you.
Mr. Votto?
I was always under the impression if they let us know by November that we paid them at the end of that current year, like in June. We
No,
don't
we
do
pay them
that.
in July. We pay them in July.
Oh, all right.
Be tough to budget if we didn't know.
Well, that's why we asked them in November, I
Yeah.
thought.
But if you're paying them in June,
You still
that's
have to
the
have
same
it in
year.
the budget.
That's the
Yeah.
same fiscal year.
I guess, okay.
Okay.
All
Anybody
right.
else? All right. Oh, Ms. Roscoe.
I'm sorry. I'm new. I'm very new to this budget, so this might seem like a very elementary question. But when we're looking under just the first line, like under the teacher salaries, and next to it, it has the differentiation between, the steps. Is that what they're getting as an annual increase? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, it's about a 2.9%. So the GWI is the 1.65, and then the step would be another increase. But they're not all the same. Not every step, going from step 2 to 3 could be significantly different than going from step 6 to 7 or 8 to 9. It's an average across all the lanes, if you will.
Okay, understood. And go ahead. Danielle,
GWI
you're trying to
stands
say
for
something.
general wage increase.
Right. And so within the teachers, any of our contracts that we have, there is salary schedules within each contract that we negotiate. So depending on, some teachers get a step, the price will be depending on where they are. The step typically aligns with the number of years of service. So if they're not at the top step, they'll get step movement. And you'll see it as we go through, you'll see it's a little bit different on each one. So depending, they'll get step movement plus GWI, depending on how we've negotiated contracts. If they're at the top step, it may only be GWI, meaning the gross wage increase.
Sure.
So that's where the variation comes in. But it's a great question. So no silly
Perfect.
question.
No,
Okay.
and I fully understand the steps. My mom is a retired teacher, so
Oh, there you go.
I grew up hearing about the steps, whether I wanted to or not. I just wanted to make sure there was that annual increase for our teachers, who I think are working really hard.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
There's 3 or 4 what I call lanes. So there's the what is it, the masters plus one, you could be in one lane with all the steps. They all have the same number of steps, but depending on the amount of education, et cetera. All right. Okay. Ms. Racho. You're muted.
Sorry. When I'm looking at, going back to the interns, when I look at page 1 in section 4, it looks like we have an increase, the $12,000. But then when I went through page in section 5, if you look at section 5, page 2, it looks like we have a decrease of 17% for elementary, but we have an increase for middle and high school. So are we just not going to use interns in the elementary schools? I don't understand why they're the only ones negatively impacted when we have a net increase.
We might have just reallocated them differently.
And I can put that on the sheet for Monday if it's too much right now.
Right, and I can look through to see, I'd have to pull the contract exactly to see where the increases, how they delineated them out. The other thing to kind of remember as well with this is it's fluid. So we don't always know ahead of time whether we're getting one for every elementary school, how many for middle, how many for high. So they typically let us know towards the end of the summer so that we can start the year, but it varies sometimes. I mean, that's the other piece of it as well. We don't always know which levels we're going to get. But I can definitely look at that and we can give you a more detailed response.
Okay. Because I was just hoping we could take everybody who wants to intern. We need the help. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Votto?
Don't certain interns request though a certain level? to work
They
with.
do. So,
That-
and that's
That's
the,
fluid. You're right, it's fluid.
correct. So we don't always know ahead of time. The universities have been wonderful with us, letting us know as quickly as they can. But I don't always, it's not consistent every year. Sometimes it's more than 1 year we have the same person. Sometimes it's somebody new every year.
Okay. We'll move to, page 2 now. So page 2 is basically the non-certified salaries. And you can see most of the different categories in here, the paraeducators, the custodians, clerical. Of note, if you look at the increase to the paras, it looks a little, it probably doesn't look like it's a 1.75%. And that's because they were in retro. And so their budget this year didn't reflect the increase they got for the contract we settled. So it's almost like it just could look odd if you look at the $500,000 there. And I just wanted to point that out. The severance, again, here it's the same process essentially. That changes based on who's retiring. So, if it's going down, it wasn't necessarily that we found a way to save. It was just less people retiring. If it went up, it was just we've got more folks retiring. And I think in one of the contracts, a couple of contracts, we had actually changed some of the rules on if you put in for retirement, it is binding. So I think we're getting a more accurate budget number, because in past years we have several people thinking about retiring and then they wouldn't at the end, or they would change their mind and stay on another year. And then the other thing I want to point out here is if you look at the bottom of page 2, the far right column, the strategic plan column, you could see there we've got money in curriculum and instruction and in special ed for wages, and that's how the strategic items fit into this document, and they also tie out to that page 1B or 3B in section 3, second page. Any questions on the non-certs?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
On the, I just lost it. Oh, overtime custodians and technicians. You're zero? You're not counting on them getting any overtime for the year?
No, that represents the increase. The column that has the dollar sign and the difference, that
Okay.
flat funded it.
Okay, got it. Sorry.
All right. We're good on the non-certs then? Okay, we'll move to the next section, which is the 200s and the benefits. And the big ticket item here is medical insurance. We have a estimated 8% increase in what's called an allocation rate. We are self-insured, so we have an allocation rate versus a premium rate. That the fully insured companies have a premium rate. So we've adjusted the premiums or the allocation costs. We estimate they're going to increase 8% across the board for all the different plan designs, et cetera. We'll get final numbers for that at the end, middle to end of April. And that number will be refined a little bit, but the 8%, what we've been told from our consultants is it's a good number because we've got enough data to project that. That's what the increase is going to be required to be. And then the other couple items, the other increases, the medical, the Medicare and Social Security are driven by primarily our non-cert wages that are subject to some of that. Any questions on the benefits? Okay. We'll move on to the 300s, which are the purchased professional technical services. And you'll see some adjustments here on the professional educational, the staff development. We are moving some of the development costs to the ARP ESSER grants and the 320 object. And we are also in the 323, the pupil services, we reduced the 323 for about 86,000 because we just reclassified that towards the tuitions for different reporting purposes. We need to record that differently now, so we moved it. It didn't go away; it just moved into the 500 series. And then you'll also see an increase in the blind and physically handicapped based on the increase in needs of about 148,000. And we've reduced the speech and hearing by moving 132,000 out to grants there. And then on the 324, the big shift was the field trips. We don't think we're going to do as many because of the transportation challenges in COVID next year. So we reduced that some. Ms. Raccio?
How are we going to be, transparent's not the right word, but how are we going to be thoughtful of knowing that we're moving some of these costs to either ESSER funds or temporary grant funds, but they're not really going away? So when the ESSER funds go away, we still have these expenses. So how are we going to be tracking the fact that they're coming back to these line items? They're just not there for right now.
I can answer some of that. Okay. A lot of the outside presenters and professional development that we're putting into the grants is actually one-time things that Carrie and I feel will be done with by the end. Carrie, I'm sorry, I see your hand raised. So we're looking at some consultants that 2 years out, we won't need them the third year. We were very mindful of which PD we put into the grant and which ones we continued in the operating fund, just to make sure that we did take care of that. So it's not a huge increase to the budget the following year, if that makes sense.
Not that it would be wrong. We just have to make sure we know it's coming when the ESSER funds stop.
Correct.
Well, I mean, when we lay out the budget, I mean, we lay out the needs, and then, special ed has some columns that are, PPS, general fund, grant, and so we see it there. It's not. I don't think we could forget about it, but I think that the key, you're right, is what's going to be recurring and what's going to be the impact down the road, whether it's a year or two down the road.
So, and I just would like to add that, similar to what Mrs. Turner said, mine may not be done, but it would be greatly reduced by the time it gets put back into the sustained budget. So, 3 years out, when we look at some of the work that we're doing in curriculum and instruction, we'll be in a much better place financially to be able to absorb that back into sustain. And you'll see that approach through the strategic plan and then through just the regular updates that we have through the instructional committee, so that the Board of Education and the public will know kind of where we are and where we're going with our outside consultants.
Okay. We'll move on to the next page. Or any more questions on this one? No? All right, next page. Page 5, the professional technical services. You'll see some increases, primarily the athletic trainer. We went out to bid and it went up quite a bit, but we kind of expected it. We just didn't know when it will, how much. It was a 3 or 4 year contract, so they adjusted the pricing there. And then on the IT items, we're seeing some increases in the support and maintenance, and we also added a few more software packages during COVID that we're going to keep. So it's kind of like the opposite of what we just talked about on the last page. These were things that we added during COVID and we put in to our operating budget now, as opposed to grant funding. Any questions on page 5?
Yeah, when do we use lifeguards?
When the kids were in the pool, right?
No, they're not. It's not. No swim. I photographed swim meets. There's no lifeguards during swim
It's
meets.
not for swim meets, it's for the swimming physical education units that occur for physical education at Sheehan High School. We
Oh.
do have lifeguards on duty.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Latour, because I wasn't sure when we used
Sorry, Ray.
we had them.
I didn't know.
I couldn't resist, Ray.
It is,
Okay, all right, are we good now with page 5? All right, so if we move to, page 6, and this is basically purchase property services, okay, the 410, the utilities, reduce the electric, because we really, have had surpluses there, and our consumption, I should say our billed consumption has, gone down a little bit. And also the water and sewer, which is actually one budget account, but that is showing some surplus, so we reduced that by about $19,000. I want to point out though, under electricity, we have a large credit related to the VOAG building that we've been using through with the electric company that probably in 3 or 4 years is going to be reduced to zero, and we'll have to start paying again for that building. So that's a number net of that, because right now the VOAG building is not being, we're not paying electricity on that. Okay, and then coming down further on this page, the repairs and maintenance, the 430, the energy efficiency reduction of 94,000, that's really not really a reduction in the sense we had put the part of the energy efficiency program in the operating budget for this year. It was a $294,000 project, or $295,000. And so the reason, that amount is going down is because that's more of a one-time cost. We picked up the rest of the energy efficiency project through the 2% allocation. So that's not, it was a one-time funding for some energy efficiency study, or not study, but actual implementation. Any questions? Mr. Ross?
it's a small amount. Air quality, only $266.
I'm sorry. That's just the increase to air quality. That's not the budgeted amount. So we just increased it to $266. So we've got $1.7 million in repairs and maintenance for 430 A through Y. And the air quality was increased by $266.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Votto, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yeah, anything we do for increasing safety and security, that wouldn't be here, right? Is it all in the strategic plan, or is there some in the sustain?
It's mostly strategic, but the security alarm maintenance, that type of stuff would be in here, as just routine maintenance. Or if we had, whether it's actually fixing something or like a software maintenance contract on software related to that.
I was talking about new things that we were adding.
That would typically be in the
strategic plan.
Correct, and be funded out of 2%.
Okay.
Or a grant or combination. Anything else on section or on page 6? All right, page 7. Continuing with the property services and utilities, the custodial cleaning contract, you see an increase, and that's because when we set the budget last year for this year, we had several contracts out to bid, and we are just adjusting for those. That's what the increase is there. The rental, the athletic rink rental, we have to use the Northford rink as opposed to I believe, is that what we moved? And so we've experienced some increased cost there. And that's what is driving the main increase there. The other, one of the other big rental items is our central office building. it's in the line, but has a modest, I think we had a 0% increase one year, a 3% the following year. I think it might have went 30303. Mr. Votto.
I would be yelled at if I didn't ask this question. So
Okay.
we are renting out Northford next year, not Choate, for hockey?
Right now, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Even though that is more expensive, right?
You're muted, Danielle.
Yes, and that's where that increase shows, because the cost went up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Doran?
Yes, just a quick question. What's the reason that they're switching where we're going for that?
They didn't let us in, I think, during COVID, and I believe that was it. And I don't know that they're going to let us in for a few. Yeah, I'll confirm that, but I believe that's why.
Okay.
Ms. Raccio? You're muted.
Sorry.
Sorry.
This custodial cleaning, we have a $58,000 increase, but in this year's revised amount, does that also include our settlement? So does that mean we really have a six-figure increase?
No, what we actually voted to move money over that's not reflected here because we started this process in December, and at the December meeting, I believe, is when we voted to move the money. So the 58,000 represents, and Mr. Deptula can clarify, but there were 2 or 3 contracts that were out to bid when we set the budget for 21-22, and they came in quite a bit higher. For the 22-23 budget, we have one contract that we have the option of renewing or bidding, and I believe we're going to renew it. That's typically what we've done with that vendor, but we don't know, that may not happen. But it really was a timing. Had we had we known the increase for the new bids, we would have, adjusted for it in the 21-22 budget.
Thank you, that helps.
All right. Ms. Passarati?
Hi, so the rink is in Northford, you said?
Yes.
Does that, does the distance somehow increase our transportation costs? Are we transporting the students?
We are, but I don't know.
No.
Much. We had one of our schools was already going there. I believe.
Yeah, White Hall is there.
They're gonna stay at the current rinks they're at. Just Choate and Northford both went up. Sheen's gonna stay at Choate next year.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it changed. Okay.
No.
I knew that we had one at Choate and one at Northford.
Right, it's gonna
Oh,
remain.
yeah. So the ice time went up, not.
Yeah, the ice.
I thought we
went up.
moved everything to Northford. That was my understanding.
All right, that clarifies things. Okay.
Okay.
Sheehan's been there this year at Choate. Choate let outside schools back in this year. Last year, because of COVID, they didn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're gonna maintain the rinks they're at right now. The ice time went up.
All right.
So it'll be the same next year as it is this year,
Correct.
just at a higher cost.
Correct.
Correct. Just want to make a note of that. I had that wrong. Okay. Do we have any other questions on page 7? All right. We'll move to page 8, which is the purchase services, and we start out with the 510, the pupil transportation. As you've seen, we have a large positive budget surplus in transportation, so we've made adjustments to the budget to reduce that budgeted amount. The drivers, no pun intended, the drivers for the budget surplus we had reduced 4 home to school routes. We had reduced some of our special ed transportation by about 594, or we reduced some of our special ed transportation, and the budget seemed to be, we kept showing a surplus for several years, so we made an adjustment there of 594,000. We are no longer required to transport students to Thames, which is the Thomas Edison Magnet School, and that was a $69,000 vehicle. And then we looked at our summer school, and we had been consistently under budget there, so we tried to factor in the history, plus we know that COVID was saving us some money there. We thought we could reduce it by $85,000. Ms. Reagan.
Yeah, the top of that column where it says revised budget, should that say 2021 to 2022? The middle
Yes.
column?
Yes.
All right, because that was kind of throwing me off.
So, okay.
And I wasn't here last year, so there's a significant increase from 2021 from the 2020 to 2021 and then the 21 to 22. Is there any background on that? Because was that just an overcompensation, and so you're making, like, you're reducing it for this coming year?
No, I think that the 21-22 year. I apologize. I just want to get my years straight. Well, we're looking at, I'm sorry, you're looking at 2021 to 21-22? The 2021 is actual versus budget. So we had last year we spent 4.9 million. And we had a lot of savings last year because we had very little private transportation. And so the budget.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think I'm following it now.
Yeah. So
there was a
trend. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'll stop. Go ahead.
No, I was just trying to, with 2021, there was a significant savings, I would imagine, because we were home for a lot of
Yes.
like all of 2020. So there was, okay, now I get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yes. Yeah, this is, the history on this account is tough because 1920 was the year we shut down for 3 months.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
It's been, but yeah, okay. Yeah, I got a little nervous. I'm like, what? But I would say that between 1920 and 2021, we had gone out to bid. So the contract, the rates did go up on the home to school buses. They went up, I want to say about 10-12%, and they went on the special ed. The rates went up a lot more than that. But then we were able to, what we did the last couple of years is we've been using multiple companies and kind of almost quoting each run. And we've gotten different pricing, and now we're at the point, quite frankly, where it's so difficult to get a van that you almost have to take what you can get. Okay, Mr. Votto?
Thank you.
Mrs. Blizzy, I'm sorry I can't put this in a question because I don't even know if I can say it. Never mind, write it. You might have just answered this question, Dominic, but let me ask anyway. The special education is reduced by 594. Is that what I'm reading?
Yes.
Why such a big number?
Because we have a big surplus.
We do in that
Yes.
area, but we don't show the surplus anywhere here, right?
No, no, we show it, when I do my projection and you see the largest surplus is transportation, and it's made up primarily of those 4 components: the regular ed reduction in buses, the special ed, the private transportation, the Thames, the magnet school, and then the summer school where we had some savings.
Now, so is there money in the budget to send? I noticed it says no longer transporting to Thames. Are we going to have any kids at Thames next year?
We're not going to be responsible for transporting them with the agreement we had with that involved. So we won't be transporting them.
Oh. But will any of our kids be going there?
I believe so. We're not transporting them this year, Mike, just so you know. That's why we're experiencing that savings this year too.
About the other thing I'm concerned about is we have a surplus in the special ed because of whatever happened over the last year. But as far as next year, we're not reducing monies because we're reducing children being placed out, correct? That's not a reflection of that minus figure.
Correct.
Okay.
No, it's.
I don't know if I'm asking the question correctly.
No, you're asking, I would just add it, that's a very difficult one to predict because,
Yeah.
you get kids that are they going to the same school? Can they be in the same vehicle?
Yeah.
And they move schools, and so, it's tough, but,
I got you, don't worry.
consistent surplus, and we're
Yeah.
trying to adjust for it.
Okay, I got you.
All right? And I think, I'm sorry, Ms. Raccio?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. Mike, we also changed the transportation a couple years ago, and we stopped paying for transportation to Wintergreen. And all of the districts stopped, and ACES is receiving transportation from another source. I believe it's the state. But Hamden started that because they found some loophole that they didn't have to pay
That's
for
right.
their own. So
I remember.
once ACES did that, then it transferred over to Thames.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Are we all set with page 8? Okay. Page 9 is our tuitions. And as you can see, we're expecting a large increase in the tuitions, about $852,000 based on placements, and also the excess cost grant. We think we're going to get less money on that, so that drives our cost up in that account. Ms. Reagan.
Sorry, I'm gonna be the nitpicky one, but that your middle column for revised budget.
Yeah, it's going to be on this.
It's gonna carry through all these pages, just so you know.
It's going to be on this whole group.
Right.
And hopefully not too many more, but unfortunately probably. But we're going to go and revise that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, I don't know if Ms. Turner wants to speak towards some of these tuitions. Do you have anything to add?
Sure, I could say one of the biggest drivers to the increase is ACES increased their tuition, and we have a significant number of students in ACES schools. So I believe it was 5%, I think they increased their tuition by,
Yeah.
which is a lot for us. So that is one of the biggest drivers.
Okay. Anything else on page 9? All right, if we want to go flip to page 10, the big one, the workshops and conferences. Again, we moved a lot of this for the language arts and math. We moved it into the grants, and it's not like we're abandoning it, but we have the grant money, so we're going to utilize some of it for some of these conferences, and we will continue these. Depending on which area needs it or which program it requires it. And then I think that's really all I have on the on the 500s. Any questions? Ms. Costelli?
Yeah, just, can you explain the planetarium line item? Last one.
Ms. Latour, can you help with that one? Is that your,
It is.
yeah, sorry.
So the gentleman who runs the planetarium, there is a professional development opportunity that we send him to every other year in terms of the new software and the new programs that they run. With COVID, obviously, we haven't really been going to a whole lot of out-of-state conferences, so we did budget for him to attend over the summer if the health and safety issues that we're experiencing now subside. So we did budget for him to go to that conference.
Great, thank you for that
You're welcome.
explanation.
Mrs. Raccio? Oops, sorry, Mr. Byrne.
I see laundry services in here, and I know that this isn't a laundry service, but I remember reading in our annual report, did we expand the laundry facilities for our families to use in our school? And are they using those now, or is that on hold because of COVID?
I believe we expanded it. I thought we brought in some,
We did.
dishwashers, sorry. But,
That's okay. So
Not dishwashers.
we have some, we used some homeless funds for that a couple of years ago. So both Lyman Hall and EC Stevens are using the machines. Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, were there any more questions? Okay, next section is 600, page 11. We had between the instructional and non-instructional supplies, we had a little bit of a revision on the, how we classified paper. I think we were, some folks were charging it to instructional, some not. So I think you'll see that reduction in instructional supplies at 18,000. A lot of that is just, we've decided to try to get everybody charged copy paper 612. So we're more consistent. And then on the non-instructional software, again, we brought in some new software, and we also have some items. Yeah, there are a couple programs, I believe, like Screencastify, that we either paid for grants, and now we're starting to put them into our operating budget. Okay, on 613 through 643, I think, we just see the normal variances based on what we need. Some of the textbooks, if we think we're going to need a few more textbooks, et cetera. But it's just kind of normal variance, I think, that happens from year to year. I don't think there's anything too terribly exciting going on there. Ms. Raccio.
The only thing that I want to, and I know it's small dollars, but I want to just mention, when we think about library books, that's an area that parents are often asked to contribute to teachers who want to build their classroom libraries. So as we think about, some of the comments that came from the town council is that parents are asked to contribute to teacher supplies, teacher classroom things every year. And that wasn't always, some counselors didn't think that was, it should be expected of parents. So I just want to make sure that we have consistency across all of the schools, that if teachers need books, that they can go to their building principals, they can request what books they want, and they have access to them without having to request parents purchase for them. Mrs. Latour, you're biting your tongue.
Okay, well, we'll go to the next page.
You muted yourself.
You're muted, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I took a breath. And really what I want to say is, especially at the elementary level, actually at all levels, we're really making a concerted effort in the library book line in particular to weed the collection that are in the school libraries. We spend a tremendous amount, and I know the veteran board members know based on how much I ask for every year in terms of books for the book rooms at the buildings, instructional books at different levels, for the classrooms and for small group work in the different grade levels. And then the classroom libraries for independent reading. Those are built year after year through a variety of different ways, whether it's through scholastic book orders where you get points and you can purchase free books, book fairs that have been occurring at the schools, not during COVID, obviously, but principals often, when I was a principal at Rock Hill, as kids would go through the scholastic book fair, the teachers would get points for that and could build their classroom libraries. And teachers are incredibly creative as well in terms of tag sales and library sales and those types of things. The Scholastic Warehouse, you can get a ton of books. And we often will provide purchase orders or funds for those things as well. So I think one of the hardest things is when it's a brand new section, you're building a classroom from scratch to build a classroom library, and often teachers are very generous with their new colleagues of weeding their collection as well. So I just wanted to be able to provide some context to how classroom libraries are built, and how we allocate, funding at both at the school level for the independent book libraries, the instructional multi-level, multi-genre book libraries at all levels, and then the actual school library purchases that are done in every building as well.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And I as a parent, I loved the birthday book club. So the librarian was wonderful to pick out a book that was of interest to my son, and he was the first one to read it on the birthday. And so I'm all in favor of supplementing, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew that that wasn't the expectation.
Right. Understood. Mr. Votto?
This might sound crazy, but I wish there were a way we could somehow get people to go to that warehouse you mentioned. Really, you could get such great buys there. We could fill a number of classrooms very inexpensively. If you go to that warehouse in Danbury and buy, they're more than 50% off sometimes.
Yeah, oftentimes
we should think about.
Yeah, you can fill a box for $6 or for $5.
But unfortunately, it's got to be somebody who knows what books are already in the building, so you don't duplicate. So it would have to be like a librarian or something.
Yep. Mrs. Bukhari has gone there quite a few times.
Not the time to talk about it, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. We really should try to take advantage of that.
I agree.
Okay, we all set on this page? All right, can we move to page 12? So heat is 690 is our heat. We have oil heat in a lot of our schools, and oil right now is very expensive. We haven't locked in for next year. Sometimes we do. Most of the times we do. We have not this year because of the price was so high when we were going to lock it in. Right, this current year we're paying $1.42 a gallon. I estimated $2.28 a gallon because that's what it was about a week or so ago whenever I was putting the numbers together. It's a big wild card right now. I talked to the purchasing agent over at the town because he does the purchasing or the locking in of this, and we're just watching it to see if it hopefully comes down so we could get a better rate. But the natural gas tube and the oil right now are outrageous price. I don't know if outrageous is the right term, but they're significant, and that's why you see such a huge increase in our heat estimates. As far as natural gas right now, the rates are up, and our demand rate, which is an amount we have to pay. We have to, because the guarantee that the gas company can provide a certain amount of gas, that's up very high, and it really we're expecting a big uptick in the natural gas this year and next year. So that's why you see a significant increase of almost $580,000. Fortunately, we had some savings on the electricity that can offset some of it, but we're seeing a large increase here. The year before we saw large savings because the oil price was almost $2 and it went down to $1.42, and now we're going the other way. Any questions on 690 heat? Page 12. Okay. Next section, 700. This is really our property equipment, instructional equipment. And the only real change here is you'll see that the 739 other equipment went down, and that's really going down because we had we are purchasing a vehicle for IT this year. That was in the budget, and it's not in the budget for next year. Any questions? All right, and then the last section, 14, the miscellaneous, I think pretty standard, just some variations a little bit. The high school graduation's up a little bit. Student activities, hopefully we're able to do a little bit more next year. And that's really, those are, I guess, what I call the highlights of the budget. Are there any questions on the 800s, the miscellaneous, or as they call it in accounting lingo, other objects? Mr. Ross?
The police on this, that's not for athletic events, that's just graduation, right?
Correct, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Ms. Racho? Muted.
This may be out of order, but as we go through and we look at I'm looking at section 3, page 1. And we have the color coded of what's recurring, grant funded, if there's any CRA funds, and then anything that's deferred. And we typically look at this over multiple years. Right now it's pushed out to 2024, 25. For those of us who've been on the board for a while, we can kind of go through and look at this and we see, oh yeah, we keep pushing this off, and it just kind of, next year we're going to see some of these things in the green column that are going to say 25, 26, because we can never, it seems like we can never get ahead to fund everything that's in strategic, which I totally understand. Administrative interns on page 4. That's been there probably for 5 years now, and we just keep pushing it out. Is there any way that, I don't know that we want to add a column, but I guess it would be helpful if people knew how long these things were on this report, even though they're 3 or 4 years out, we never get to them.
So Tammy, I just want to remind you that that's actually that was one of Patty Purcell's requests to have that historical data. So I believe that is supposed to be in the works.
You're muted, Danielle.
I'm sorry, I forgot I was muted. I'm talking to myself. Yes, we definitely can do that and make sure that we include so you can see that historical data for that piece. Absolutely.
We just have to figure out how to present it in there.
Agreed.
Even if you did it after the description and just put 2018, 2019 of when it went on the list. I don't want to, I know all these reports are tied together. Adding a column would mess things up in other places, but maybe just in some narrative piece, just for new board members who wouldn't know. And they're like, oh, we're going to add this in this year. Well, maybe, but we'd have to have the money for it.
But so would that be for, on the interns, the way I read this is, we're asking for it in 23, 24. We haven't asked for it yet. But there would be other ones that would be deferred across all, across all 4, well, the requested column and the other 3. But you wouldn't know if we just requested it 4 years in a row, or we've been requesting it for 9 years in a row. Is that kind of what you're trying to get at? Amy?
Well, if we're already funding it, then we know we have a plan.
Yeah, no, but if it's not
I
funded,
think of things like administrative interns, to me, that sounds like the assistant principals for the elementary schools. I don't know if that's the same thing, but we always seem to, you're shaking your head no, so I've got that wrong. But for the things, Kathy, to your point, I think for things that have been on here for a long time, it would be helpful to know that they've been on here for a long time.
Right, I agree. Just add a descriptor when it first goes on. Put in the year that it was on. That's all.
Oh yeah, that would solve that.
That would solve it.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
I know it's picky.
No, it's
No,
good
that's okay.
information. Actually, good information.
When we go back and look at this section, we can definitely reference that.
Yeah. All right, so, I think that's really all I had on these sections. We will be revising the headers on some of those section 4 to get the right year in there. I apologize for that, but we will send you updated one, and fix the website too. Do we have any other questions on anything we went through?
I did want to make just one comment as I was thinking a little bit more about the interns, when we were discussing the interns as well. The cost of the interns did change and it did go up, and I will get further information for that. But there's also a different cost for interns if they're student teaching. So the price is also different. If they're with us, but they're student teaching that year, it's one price. If they're just interning for the year, it's also a separate price, on top of the fact that it increased. But I'll delineate all of that out and get that information to you. Are there any other further questions or comments for this evening? Okay. So I'll leave the questions open. If you choose to submit any in writing, I will leave them open till Monday, January 31st at 9 a.m. We'll set the agenda for Monday night for another budget workshop, which is where we'll go over the strategic budget and we'll answer the questions that we have received thus far and the ones that may come in. And obviously any questions that you may have as we go through and present. Mr. Votto?
Yeah, are you planning to just do like a 2-hour one again Monday? I like to go a little bit longer so we have less nights that we're out doing this. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way.
You want to just adopt it now? Or?
No, I'm not saying that.
Sorry.
I don't care, but I mean, we already had a plan tonight for 8 o'clock, but I'm just wondering if it would be easier for everybody if we just spent maybe another hour so that we don't have to come back another night to do this. That's all. Dominic, that was a great job. You got right through that. It was great.
Oh, thank you. I guess I would just add that we gotta make sure the agenda covers, if we, like if we wanted to jump onto something additional tonight, I don't think we could because it's a special meeting and I don't think we could add agenda items. So we gotta be aware of that.
Right. Maybe we can make it more open-ended next time. I don't know. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
I'm fine with that.
What do you think,
I would
Ann?
say if it's a weekday, and this is solely being a little selfish, I'm in meetings, pretty much until 5 o'clock some days. So to be put into another 3 or 4 hour meeting, and I know it's just a short period of time, but it makes for a super, super, super long day. When we're starting at 7:30, I'm starting sometimes 7:30 in the morning. So it just makes it really hard. I like knowing that I have a defined block of 2 hours. It makes planning a little easier on my side. So I can plan what my work schedule is going to be for that day as well. Having them a little lengthier, I would do it, but I'm just saying it wouldn't be my first option. Mrs. Rasko.
Sorry, I was just going to piggyback on what you just said, Donna. Again, I'm being totally selfish. I have 2 very young children. If there's 6 to 8, I know I could at least get them to bed one night. And if, again, I'll do whatever needs to be done. But if we're weighing in, when things just go beyond what the agenda time frame is supposed to be, it just makes it really hard. And, they don't always understand. And if I could be present for them, it's just trying to find that balance. But again, I know I'm the only one, with little kids. So I'm just going to speak up for myself but I'll do whatever. And I hope that doesn't seem like non-compliant, and I'm not trying to make it that way.
Mrs. Castelli?
I just want to say, Marla and Donna and Jennifer, don't ever apologize for or feel that you're being selfish in explaining your situation. And you don't have to explain your whole situation, but it's good that you're speaking up and saying this really doesn't work for me. Just as Mike was speaking up, he would prefer it one way because that would work better for him. And that's how we reach consensus. So please don't ever feel that you have to hold back because, oh, they'll perceive me as being selfish. That's absolutely never going to, should never happen. At least not from me.
I don't think you ever have to worry about me being a little reticent or shy. That has never been like one of these conversations. So, but I do appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Kathy. And even if we could find a middle ground and add a half hour to each one, I don't know. I've never done this before. I don't know if a half hour on one session is significant in the end, but just a thought.
Mrs. Passaretti?
Yeah, I do see both sides, because I do like, banging things out all at once. And, but again, once it hits the 8 o'clock mark, I feel like I'm a much more effective, member of the meeting when I'm a little bit more refreshed. I will be honest, my attention span will start to wane, at hour 3. And so I want to make sure that I'm making decisions based on a clear head, and rather than doing this, looking at my watch like, oh my gosh, is it almost over? And the fear is that people stop paying attention, and this is super important. And I would want everyone to have their undivided attention for this. But there is the temptation to just get it done at once, because there are quite a few of these meetings. But I'm leaning more toward 2 hours is about my limit.
Mrs. Rasco? Mrs. Raccio, I'm sorry.
For a middle ground, I would be okay if we went a little bit longer, but it would have to be on the weeks that we don't have another meeting. And we already had one meeting that went till 9:30 this week. And that was a tough night. On top, it was, Monday, long day, kid bouncing off the wall at 9:30. He was still up when I got off the call. So it's hard when it's multiple nights. So if it was our only meeting of the week, then yeah. But if we're going to do Mondays and Wednesdays, to add time to both of them, that would make it even harder. So maybe we can come up with a middle ground or something.
Mr. During?
Just as we're sharing personal opinions on this, my own personal preference would be to have fewer meetings, even if they are longer. Because when I'm making my schedule, I'm often declining other things to go to these meetings, which is fine. It's what I signed up for. But if we're talking about personal preferences, just want to say my personal preference would be to have fewer meetings but longer. But I'm obviously most happy to go with whatever the group wants.
Mr. Ross?
After 8 o'clock, I start nodding off. Sorry.
Mr. Votto? You're on mute.
I just want to say, Donna, just the opposite. I am very shy. So it was, I really didn't mean to upset the apple cart by changing the time. But I went out of character there for a while.
Yeah, I can tell that. Mrs. Castelli?
I just want to say, Mike is a night owl. He's up until, 11, 12 o'clock every night. So that's fine for him. He knows I go to bed at 9. So,
And you're retired.
8 o'clock works for me.
All right. Well, if every meeting's as efficient as tonight, Mr. Barone, you did a fantastic job of ushering us through. So kudos to you. So, but of course, I'm also the type of person that likes to read, go through it. And so I will go through this book again, and you may see a lot of notes on, questions on Monday. So who knows, but thank you so much for doing that. Are there any other items to cover tonight? If not, then I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and it is 7:34. Have a good night, everybody.